Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Roxanne Ahmadpour from Hive Medicine, and I'm joined by Dr. Donovan, also of Hive Medicine. And we wanted to have a conversation today about how we are personally working with the current situation of COVID-19 and the ongoing pandemic, and how we're sort of dealing with the issues around that and thriving during these really, really difficult times. Um, and I just want to start by acknowledging that this is a really difficult time for everyone. I have not met or spoken to a single person who is not in some way struggling to adapt. And so if that's your experience as well, know that you're not alone, and that's a completely normal response to these really unprecedented circumstances. Um, and what we're seeing is that for better, for worse, COVID-19 is not going away. And we're needing to figure out how we as individuals and as a community can adapt and invest in self-care practices that keep us going for the long term, because we're in this for the long haul. And hopefully, it does. We get some effective treatments and things resolve eventually. But I think as we're seeing this evolve, it's not as simple and clear cut as maybe we all had hoped. And so this is just a reminder that this is a marathon and not a sprint. So thinking about tools and practices that allow us to sort of sustain ourselves for the long haul are going to be really, really important in getting through this.
So what I've been working on, one of the things I've been working on is trying to establish a routine for myself and my family where, we wake up at similar times every day and we go to bed at similar times every day. There has been a natural progression in our household for a later bedtime and a later rising time, as we haven't had to commute in the morning. We're working on this schedule and trying to find times for all of the things that we want to do in a day, because it's really easy right now for us to kind of not do anything or have a time crunch where we have to do a lot of things. That's like, it might start getting dark and like, oh, the kids haven't been outside yet today. And so if instead we're trying to create a schedule so we make sure that happens every day, that we spend some time outside every day. We are a little careful with sunblock when it's needed, and we try to eat real food every day, as close to the original ingredients as possible. So like vegetables, and then focusing on macronutrients and like whole food. We're also working on sleep and making sure that we're getting enough quality and deep sleep. And sometimes that means taking a nap during the day. This time has shifted so much in our lives that we can do that. Dr. Ahmadpour, have you noticed a shift in your sleep as well?
I have, yep. There's just been this kind of gradual progression where I'm going to bed later and later and waking up later and later. And I just had a conversation with my partner about this and like, hey, what's going on? And we're trying to make it a point to establish, just a reminder of noticing, hey, this thing is happening, and then deciding what we want to do instead. And we came up with a routine that we feel good about following, and that is, starting to set a more a bedtime that we feel good about and a waking time that we feel good about, so that we're not continuing to slip off off the rails.
Yeah. So one thing that's been really helpful for me, most of what we're doing is routine based. Like, these are the things that need to get accomplished over the course of a day, like doing the laundry, washing the dishes. Some of us have work to do, others have school work to do. But trying to actually firmly schedule time for movement, because that's one of the things that gets pushed into the wayside for us. So we've been going on scheduled walks and, going for a long distance and seeing if we can push ourselves from one day to the next to walk a little further. We have a new puppy in the house. So to begin with, he was only walking a block and then we'd have to carry him. But we're moving into a progression of longer and longer walks. And just the reminder to do that on a daily basis. And for me, if it's not scheduled, it won't happen. If I'm just like, oh, I'm going to take a walk later, it's not going to happen. So I need, to enlist my phone to alert me to it, or my husband. Occasionally I will contact a friend and we will talk on the phone while we're both walking in our respective neighborhoods. So we're continuing to have that like social accountability for doing something that we enjoy and is good for us, and we're having some social time together even though we're not physically near each other.
Yeah.
How about you, Dr. Ahmadpour?
I've noticed that the movement piece ties really well into this need that I've noticed for myself to get outside, and how easy it is to spend all day indoors because I'm working from home and I'm, living at home and I'm just home all of the time. And so this reminder to move is also a reminder for me. I need to go outside and get some natural sunlight in my eyes, to stimulate some of the kind of sleep-wake rhythms in our brains that helps regulate our circadian rhythm. And the benefits that come with getting fresh air and getting to walk through a neighborhood that has some activity where there's people riding their bikes or walking, and there's just some dynamic stimulation for my brain that feels really good, because I am spending a lot of time on my computer at home, and it's so nice to balance that with some of the natural rhythms of the outside world. So I've been really enjoying walking in my neighborhood, and if I can, going to a park where there's more trees and more foliage and natural things around me, and trying to kind of balance the work that I'm doing at home with some exposure to nature as much as possible.
With spending so much more time on the computer, Zoom meetings and watching the news or any of those things, another piece about being outside is that it allows your eyes to focus on the horizon, which is a much softer and focus, and allows your pupils to it can constrict actually when you focus on the horizon, but that's actually a relaxed state. So it allows for your eyes to decompress and get rid of some of the eye strain. I find the filtered light through leaves is really important too, especially if I'm having eye strain or a headache or anything like that. It can be really soothed from the forest. And so I have done a little, drive to a forest and walk around outside as well. How's your yoga practice going?
My yoga practice it's something that I've had pre-COVID, and during COVID, I've found that it's been so crucial to maintaining my mental and emotional and physical health. And I'm really, really grateful that the yoga studio that I was a part of transitioned into doing online Zoom classes, which doesn't take the place of the feel of getting to go to a studio in person and be around other people exercising or doing this practice together. But it's been this really wonderful resource where I've felt like I have a connection to a community of people that I was connected to pre-COVID, And we've continued to sort of gather together and practice yoga together virtually. And it's kind of nourished me in the sense of I'm getting to continue this movement practice and mindfulness practice. And I've also been able to have a sense of community during a time when we can feel really isolated. So I've been really grateful for that, and I encourage all of you to look into yoga studios or Pilates studios who are doing online classes, and that can be a really great resource. If I am left to my own devices, I will just lay on the floor.
A little crocodile pose.
Crocodile pose. That's my favorite yoga pose. And it's great for resting and restoring, but at the same time wanting to challenge myself and do some more dynamic postures and sequences that are good for my physical health. I need that component of being led and guided so that I can sort of turn my mind off and say, this is something that I don't need to manage right now. Someone else is going to manage it for me. And that's really, really therapeutic for me. As a doctor, my brain can just be on the case really quickly. And I also recognize that I need to be able to turn it off and receive nourishment from someone else. And it's a really important part of balance in my life.
You're bringing up a really good point for me, because I had a very regular yoga practice in person, and then I had children, and they really disrupted my schedule. So it was hard for me to get to a yoga studio. So it was always like this special treat when I would be able to get in person to a studio that was open when I was available and all of those things. And now it's just dawned on me as you were talking that a lot of those restrictions have gone away.
Absolutely.
With being able to have that community online. So the scheduling can be shifted. So I'm going to be looking into that.
Yes, I highly recommend it. And I agree that a big challenge for me before that was making sure I could make the class on time. And, the classes are only offered at specific times of the day. And if I had some other engagement, I couldn't go. And now I can sort of plan a routine and schedule around my needs and say, okay, well, I can do this yoga class at this time and it's available online for me. Which is miraculous. So that restriction is gone, and it's actually much more accessible for me now.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've been thinking about is drinking more water and remembering to drink water. Because I had these very specific times and places that were triggers for me to drink water.
Mm-hmm.
So getting in my car, getting on the bus, those things were things that were helpful for me to remember to drink water, or between patients when I saw them in person. And then there's also like finagling when to go to the bathroom, and all of that has shifted. So now I have fewer external cues to drink water, and I have more opportunity to drink water. So I have to take advantage of that extra opportunity. And I've noticed that it's working, and it's really helpful for, all of my water needs.
Yeah, that's such an important reminder. It seems so simple, but I can often go hours without drinking water and feel, kind of woozy and strange and off. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't had any water. Yeah. And that can just, it can just, fill me up. And it's so important. That's a really good reminder.
So how have you been dealing with community in your life and having social time?
Yeah. So, it's interesting, like the very beginning of the pandemic, I think I was really just kind of going day by day and not really, I didn't really have like a plan or strategy for most of these things that we're talking about. And maybe a month or two into COVID, I started just not feeling myself and kind of feeling disoriented. And I started reaching out to family members and friends a little bit more intentionally and regularly. And I found that it's been incredibly beneficial for my mental health. Um, and I think it was easy for me to just sort of, um, yeah, not consider how important that was for me. And so some of the ways that to reiterate some of the things that we've talked about, I've also gone on walks and talked to a friend or family member on the phone, and that's been a really fun way to catch up and also get some movement and sunlight and all of those wonderful things. And then the yoga community has been another important piece of feeling like I'm connected to, some larger aspects outside of my little bubble, and connecting with other people from other walks of life and sharing in that. Um, and recently, I've started to meet with some friends and maintain physical distance and wear masks and do all of the safety precautions, but meet up and go for a walk together outside and kind of maintain some distance, or meet up at a park and maintain some distance. And that has been really, really nourishing. I think as much as I'm grateful for all of the technology and telecommunication that we have, there's just no replacement for feeling connected to someone or a group of people in person, and having that in-person connection and contact. And since I've started to pay more attention to this and really had this kind of light bulb moment of like, wow, this is actually very important for my mental health, I've noticed that it's made a huge difference. Um, yeah. And how about you, Dr. Donovan?
So I have been doing some meeting up in parks, especially with other families, because I have young kids who definitely are missing social contact as much or more than I am. So we do physical distancing. We definitely wear masks when we do it. And it's funny, some of the kids are really excited to show each other their new masks and their new mask style, like whether it goes over the ears or around them. And so we've done some of that. Another thing that I've been doing that has been interesting, it's because I haven't done it in a long time, is I've been writing letters to friends and family members who live far away. And we've had some really lovely letter exchanges. And it's interesting to see how much my hand cramps when I'm writing with a pen now, because I'm so accustomed to typing. And those, send it through the mail, it gets there eventually on whatever day it's going to get there. And so far, 3 of the people I've written letters to have been like, this couldn't have come at a better day. And one of my friends, that was how I found out that she was really struggling. She lives alone and was, isolated to begin with. And she's a very gregarious and friendly person. So she was having a really hard time with her social life compacting. And so just having written her a letter, and then she contacted me right away back, we, talked through a bunch of strategies for her to, get what she needed, because I'm a little bit of an introvert and I can function a little bit better in this time than someone who really needs a lot of interaction and isn't getting it. And I was happy that I had reached out to her, because then it's helping her cope, and we all as a community need to help each other cope right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good reminder that we're not alone, and that by reaching out, either us reaching out to someone or having someone reach out to us, it can be this really wonderful way of just kind of sharing in the experience and um, you know letting some of the tension and the challenges and difficulty kind of fizzle out, and feel like we're cared for and like we're heard and supported. And that can be so, so important. So another thing that has been kind of an interesting conundrum during these times is folks who are working from home. And there's this kind of topic of work-life balance, where in pre-COVID times we might have had a little bit more clear-cut definition between what is home life and what is work life, because we were sort of physically traveling to a different place and putting on clothes and all of these sort of symbolic and ritualistic practices that sort of defined our roles and the space that we occupied. And those things have sort of just dissolved. And so for myself and Dr. Donovan, we're working at home. And we're also living our lives and have families and have friends and community. So how have you been finding this kind of teeter-totter of work-life balance while living at home and having 3 kids and working at home?
I am in a really privileged place where I can have a physical space that I do work out of in my home that doesn't get used for anything other than my work. So I can leave that and go somewhere else. At the beginning of the pandemic, that wasn't true. I was working out of my bedroom, which made for a lot like messier blend. So one of the things that I would try to do at that time when I was trying to figure that out was I would ritually change my clothes. So I would wear clothes that are, work clothes, even if it was only really Zoom appropriate on top, and would, fit the ritual of going to work and being at work. And then I would change into something else afterwards so that I reminded myself on a physical, tangible level that it's not work time anymore.
Yeah. And how have you noticed productivity in terms of your work life? How has that been for you?
For me, it's really been kind of fits and starts, where there are some days that I accomplish way more than I even anticipated doing that day. And then there are other days where I feel like all I'm capable of is sitting and staring at a wall. And I'm trying to build space for that for myself, where I can accept either or both state of being. Where in the past I was used to, there's prescribed times for productivity for this activity or that, like this is the laundry time and this is the finish my charts time. And now they're kind of all blending into each other.
Mm.
So things are getting done. And I'm just trying to honor the times where I'm like, oh, I need to not do anything right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And to echo that, I've also noticed that in figuring and sorting all of this out for myself, all of this trial and error and navigating this, I've tried to return to this reminder and mantra that I've had that to just be easy on myself, that this is hard.
Yeah.
And if I'm having a day where things are not going the way that I want them to or planned on them going, I try to just remind myself, it's okay and I can be easy on myself. And that all of these things that we're very accustomed to are shifting and we're having to adapt, and there can be some fumbling along the way as we kind of figure this out. Yeah.
So I think there are some like basic reminders that it's kind of important to address. There was a period of time where I was noticing that I had slowed down on my regular like my COVID hand washing. And I was joking with my husband that I have to go back to second year medical school hand washing, when you learn about all of the things that can harm you from not washing your hands. So it's good to, even though we're all sick of it, it's still really important to wash our hands very regularly, especially when you've been out in contact with the world, even if that contact has been physical distancing. The idea of fomite transmission, getting COVID from, touching an object where someone else has touched it, that seems to be a less likelihood of way of getting it, but it's still possible. That is still a transmission route. So hand washing is really important. I prefer soap and water to hand sanitizer any day, but I use hand sanitizer more than I ever have in the pre-COVID days.
Yeah, it's useful to have that on hand for when you're out and about and soap and water may not be available.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great reminder, and really great reminder to continue physical distancing, as we talked about, starting to feel a little bit more encouraged to, say, meet up with folks in person at a park or an outdoor space. It can be so easy and tempting to just kind of automatically go back to the behaviors and patterns we're used to, and getting close and wanting to hug or wanting to be closer, and it's just a friendly reminder that keeping 6 feet apart as best as you can, while also wearing your mask, and making sure that whenever you're in a public space away from home, you're wearing your mask to protect others around you, and also maintaining that physical distance, especially as the pandemic is going on, and maybe we're feeling a little fatigued from all of this like vigilance and effort. It's just a really important reminder that these things are still relevant and still important to continue doing.
Yeah, and using a mask to protect others, it's also important to think about things like, is your mask clean? Is it 3 layers? Is it over your nose or under your nose? Because you really want it over your nose to be most protective of others. It doesn't work when your nose is exposed. And so there's some really cool videos of people coughing into petri dishes and showing the results of how the bacteria grows. And it's not necessarily COVID, that's a virus, so it's not that, but it's things that are growing in the petri dish from a cough with a mask and a cough without a mask. And the mask really helps on the transmission to others piece. And COVID is kind of one of those things where we all have to assume that we have it and behave as though we have it. The testing isn't widespread enough, and asymptomatic transmission is huge. So that's the best thing we can do right now, is to wear a mask when we're around others. And maybe if you're out for a walk and there's no one around, or you're running and there's no one around, then it's not as important. It's, getting the breathing nice and easy would be better without a mask, but put it on when you're around people, especially indoors.
And Dr. Donovan, you mentioned something to me about because of the nasopharynx or nose throat kind of colonization of COVID, something about gargling. Could you share more about that?
Sure. I read an article the other day, and I'm not sure that it's, 100% scientifically valid, but it struck me as making sense. The virus accumulates, and then the disease is based on how much it has accumulated, and it accumulates in the back of your mouth, in your throat, and a little bit above the back of your mouth, like towards your nose. And so the person who wrote the article was postulating that gargling was a wonderful thing to do as a regular hygiene habit in COVID times, it's a pretty good one anyway. So adding in, if you're not doing it already, adding in gargling at night before you go to bed with something that is antiseptic. So it could be mouthwash or like warm salt water, something along those lines, so that you're breaking up any mucus that's back there that's harboring virus. So that can be a really good thing to just add into your nightly routine as far
Yeah.
as getting prepared for bed. And it also helps stimulate your vagus nerve, and that's always helpful in so many different levels.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Um, and I want to close the conversation by saying that this might be a time where you're noticing that you are in need of support that you may not have had in the past, such as counseling, or establishing a regular check-in with a provider. And I'm very much encouraging that if any of this is sounding like you're on board, but you need some help to kind of get the steps together, or really figure out what will work best for you in your situation, or if you're looking for even more specific support in terms of your health, either your mental health, your physical health, or emotional health, I highly encourage establishing a relationship with a provider if you have not done so already. This could be a naturopathic doctor, this could be a medical doctor, it could be a nurse practitioner, someone in your community, or a counselor, a mental health counselor. And we have those services available at Hive Mind Medicine. I offer counseling as well as naturopathic medical services. And Dr. Donovan also has a practice where she's offering nice comprehensive naturopathic medicine services. And we're continuing to do telemedicine with our patients. So if we can be a resource to you in any way, please feel free to reach out. And we can also help point you in the right direction if you're looking for something else, or more specific. So thank you so much for joining us and listening. And I wish you are all well during these really difficult times.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmadpour.